Welcome to Channel 24. Michael Sheitelman, political analyst, is joining me now. Michael, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, Natalia.
Michael, so I was checking our previous conversation, what we were talking about, and that was before the Parade of Nine. I was listening your extremely amazing stream when this parade was happening in Moscow, and your fresh reactions over everything. But do you want something to add right now to our Western public, your reflections on what was happening in Moscow back then?
Yeah, it was very interesting that last day before a parade, the main events really they happened in world diplomacy and in geopolitical diplomacy. They happened the day before, May 8th. Why it happened? That Russia, they started, Mr. Putin, proclaimed ceasefire on May 8th and 8th and 9th, yeah, for 2 days. He proclaimed it alone. So he said, we don't need any improvement from Ukraine. And Ukraine strongly, very strong strike was that day on almost all the Russian regions, including Moscow city and about 25 regions out of 80 regions of Russian Federation. So all the European regions of Russia were under the strike and under attack of Ukrainian drones and missiles. And what happened next? Mr. Putin asked for mercy. He came to Trump administration and asked them to ask from Ukraine to organize ceasefire on the time of parade. So Ukraine brought their own conditions, and conditions was we are not ready for 2 days ceasefire, only 3 days, 9, 10, and 11th. And the second condition was that Russia should to release 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners, soldiers prisoners, I mean. It was exchange, the planned exchange, 1,000 for 1,000. And Russia agreed. So Russia absolutely lost the pre-parade negotiation. They lost this diplomatic war because they stayed on their position strongly, and there were a lot of threats, but Ukraine stayed on over all of these threats and continued to strike on Moscow and other Russian places and Russian facilities. President Zelensky also made some symbolic step, and he signed the paper which allowed the parade in city of Moscow, and he allowed the parade in only in Red Square. And he also mentioned the geographical coordinates of this place of Red Square. And in his paper, it was mentioned that on this Red Square, we will not have a war during this 1 day of parade. So it was very strong symbolic act. And all of the world who interested in this war saw how Russia prayed to mercy, asked to stop war for 1 day. The war which they started almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And they asked to stop just for 1 day for Mr. Putin, for President Putin being safely on the center of Moscow city. He usually spends the time in bunker under the earth and in 100 meters under the earth. And now he was who needed to go outside for the parade, and it was too risky for him, too risky for one person, Mr. Putin.
Michael, do you think that was a real Putin going out of his from his cave?
Well, we have very long distance to Red Square to recognize is it Putin, real Putin, or not real Putin, or some Dublin Putin. I don't know exactly, really. I don't know, and it doesn't matter, by the way, because if Ukraine were strike on not real Putin and kill not real Putin, it was anyway like, oh, we killed Putin. You have some additional. So it was risky anyway. But Ukraine made it from the, humanitarian reason. And President Zelensky, when he when he signed his document about the ceasefire for this day, he especially mentioned that this document is humanitarian document. And what he was asked by American partners for this humanitarian ceasefire. But, Russia did not answer with another humanitarian steps. More than that, they just they stepped back with all of their promises. They stepped back with exchange of prisoners, 1,000 for 1,000. They stepped back that they promised not to attack Kiev, by the way, not to attack Kiev. And they attacked just this last night. They attacked Kiev, and we have a lot of casualties, and we have about 10 people killed by Russians, I mean civilians, in their homes. Were killed this night in Kiev, in the main city of Ukraine. Despite the promises from Mr. Putin that he will not strike Kiev for this as an exchange for this period, which was safe, and Ukraine did not strike, and Ukraine had the possibility to strike on the period. But period itself also was very, poor. When first time in Russian history, in the history of Russian Federation, I mean, not Soviet, but Russian history, real Russian history, Russian Federation is the state which has 36 years of history. And this is the first victory day in their history. Then only soldiers participated in their parade. It means no any techniques, no any tanks, no any missiles, nothing. That is first. And second, this parade, by the way, continued only 45 minutes. 45 minutes. All of this celebration was 45 minutes. But when we watched the picture from the Red Square, we watched picture from Red Square only about 20 minutes. Because in the middle of this live stream, Russians, they put a lot of video takes which were created by artificial intelligence, by AI. The videos with some jets, military jets, the video with some missiles, which was artificial, not the real one. And half of this period, the audience just watched not Putin and not the real soldiers, but the artificially created pictures from some war or something, and artificially created military jets, which was absolutely funny to see that.
Michael, unfortunately, yes, that weak and poor picture that we saw on a parade of 9 in Moscow doesn't affect how massively Russia can attack Ukraine, as the previous night, as the one you mentioned. And Michael, this horrible terroristic attack coincided with Donald Trump and Marco Rubio's visit to China. Do you think this was just a coincidence, or was Putin trying to, to send a message through this terror? And another one additional, why American president and China's leader Xi Jinping are not reacting, not a word in front of the camera, in front of the whole world, not a word about this attack?
Oh, exactly. You see all the reasons and consequences. President Trump, when he just take off from Washington, before that he had a meeting with journalists, and he gave two very important phrases about Russian Federation. First was openly about Russia, because journalists, they asked him if he promised to Russian Federation any Ukrainian territories. They meant Donbas region, Donetsk Oblast region, because there is a lot of rumors and expert views about the meeting between Putin and Trump last year, and there is a version that in this meeting Trump promised to Putin Donbas area of Ukraine to give it as a present to Russian Federation. And Trump said, no, I never promised to Russia any Ukrainian territories, which was very, very important step. And the second phrase was that President Trump sees only two superpowers in our modern world. This is China and United States. The second statement, first of all, this is true statement. This is not false. This is absolutely true statement. Really, we have only two superpowers, and this is China and United States. We could compare it in technological development. We could compare it with armies and navy, for example, and economy, the value of economy and capitalization and market cap, etc., etc., etc. And in each parameter, you will not find any another comparable superpower in the world. Maybe European Union as a market, but not as a technological superpower and not as a military superpower. European Union, for my sorrow, is behind these two superpowers in technology and in military aspects. So yes, we have only two superpowers. That's true. But this statement by President Trump was as, the shooting towards Putin. You are not superpower. You are not on the same table. As some diplomats, some American diplomats, they said that Mr. Putin now, he is not on the table of adults, he is on children table. The small country, very small possibilities, very small potential, and nothing as economy, almost zero as economy. And also during the war against Ukraine, we could see that they don't have, the Russians, they don't have not second army in the world, not third, and not number 10, I don't know. So yes, only two superpowers. And it was pity to see that in Beijing, during the meeting with President Xi, between President Trump and President Xi, that meeting, by the way, they started at 10 o'clock a.m. in Beijing, 10 o'clock p.m. in Washington it was, and in Kiev it was 5 a.m., 5 a.m. And 5 a.m., it was the heydays of the Russian attack on Kiev and on Ukraine. Last 24 hours, Russia struck by 1,500 drones on Ukrainian territory, and mostly it was civil society and just the cities, not military targets. Not, by the way, not energetic targets, just the buildings. And exactly at that time, Xi and Trump, they meet one another. And they started the discussion. And after the discussion, they also published some, it was not exactly the common paper, it was some understanding paper from each side separately, And they just mentioned that they discussed also Ukrainian issue, how they called that Ukrainian issue. They discussed that. But we did not see any condemnation. They did not condemn this attack. They did not say any word, not Xi and not Trump, that this is bad behavior, let's say, about Russian Federation. And this is not, this is unacceptable to China and United States. And in this case, when we see that when Russia, the biggest country of Asia, attacks the biggest country in Europe, Ukraine, and at the same time, two superpowers, they have a meeting which happens once in 5 years, and they did not pay any attention to this attack, just any attention. And they don't condemn these attacks. So it means that these two countries, they can't be superpowers. They can't be superpowers. When you are superpower in technology and you are superpower in army, for example, but you are not superpower in humanity. You are not superpower in human rights. You are not superpower in peace issues. And Mr. Trump, by the way, he is the chairman of Board of Peace, and he did not mention this this is the biggest attack during all 5 years of Russia-Ukrainian war. And they don't mention that. So how we could call them superpowers now? This is super weaks and not superpowers.
Yeah, I thought that it's not a common thing for such a people as Donald Trump or especially Chinese leader Xi Jinping to show any compassion and sympathy to us.
It does not depend about us or not us, in each high level event in the world, I mean, meeting in United Nations, Munich Conference of Security, or I don't know, any international event, any big international event, if during this event happens something like this attack, so it is tradition, diplomatic tradition to condemn this attack. It does not especially about Xi or especially about Trump. No. It is just general. I did not say that they should, I don't know, to attack Moscow for. No. Just to condemn. Just to say, no, we are asking you to come back to the United Nations rules, for example, yeah? Or at least to Geneva Convention of how to make a war. If you don't ask for peace, so at least ask not to attack civilians during the war. Each organization, every organization, not only United Nations, do that regularly. Every day we see that. For example, just exactly today, President Putin sent his letter to President and to Prime Minister of India. Prime Minister of India. And this is the letter of, how to call that, the letter then he bring his solidarity with Indian people.
Condolences,
because
yeah.
Exactly, condolences. The condolences for hurricane which happened in India, and some dozen of people died in this hurricane, and some people were injured, and some buildings were destroyed. And he sent it today to India. But simultaneously, at the same day, he and Russians, they killed dozens of people in Ukraine, because 10 people isn't only in Kiev, but in other our cities during last 24 hours. In total, it is about 20 people there killed. And he destroyed a lot of buildings. He bombed the gas station in the center of Kiev. Gas station. When people there here in gas station. And he bombed it with missiles from strategic aviations, from strategic jets of Russian Federation. And he did not bring any letters to Ukrainian people, only to Indian people.
Absolutely. Speaking about India, I was listening recently, Russia Today India, and Foreign Minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, gave an interview when he was complaining about that after the meeting in Alaska, nothing is continuing, nothing is actually happening between Washington and Moscow. He was complaining, he was so sorry and pity that there are only words and no collaboration, no business happening between the United States and Russia. Do you think it's a sincere thing from Lavrov coming, or just he's playing some game here?
It is not only, he was not only the Minister of Russian Federation in this case, but he was also, it was also his private interest in this statement in India. Why? If you paid attention, if you watched the parrot, I don't know if you watched or not watched the parrot in Moscow.
I watched the parrot together with you, Michael.
Okay, together with me, yeah. So on the Red Square, they have a special place for the highly respected guests. And these guests is the foreign leaders. This time it was just leaders of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Belarus, and Myanmar, or something like that. And high society guests from Russian politics. Usually it is deputy members of Russian parliament, minister, etc. But this time, this number of guests was very limited, because also the parrot was very limited and very small, and also the number of guests was very limited. And the guests were chairman of parliament, of Russian parliament. It was the prime minister of Russian Federation, some another ministers, yes, the city manager of Moscow, but no Mr. Lavrov. No foreign minister of Russian Federation participated in the parade, And then everybody paid attention that he was not on the Red Square. He was not invited. So obviously he is now not in favor of Mr. Putin because he lost all the diplomatic issues during last at least year. He lost the negotiation in Alaska. Afterwards, after the negotiation in Alaska, Putin and Trump, they discussed the next meeting in Budapest. And before the meeting in Budapest, just a couple of days before this meeting, there was a phone conversation between Lavrov and Mr. Rubio, the State Secretary of United States. And after this conversation, the meeting between Putin and Trump was canceled by Trump. So it was obviously mistake, a Lavrov mistake, yeah? And also all of that initiative by Mr. Lavrov, they bring a lot of losers to Russian side. By the way, the last diplomatic war before the parade was also lost by the foreign ministry of Russian Federation, by Lavrov. So now, then when he appears in India and he speaks about some, I don't know, understandings from Alaska, understandings from Anchorage meeting, he just tried to save his own career or probably his own life, physical life, because he knows a lot of Putin's dirty secrets, so he couldn't just to be sent to the pension or to retirement. He could be also sent or to jail or to just some something could happen with him. Usually it happens with jets, planes, of friends of Mr. Putin, some air catastrophic events. But the most painful for Lavrov and for Russian Federation, again, is this statement by Trump that he never promised Donbas region to Russian Federation, because this is the only issue from Alaska, and this is the issue which Lavrov always come back to this issue, that in Alaska he did not say exactly this wording. This is not his wording, no, but he make a hints about that in Alaska it was promised to Putin that Russia will receive some Ukrainian territories. And Mr. Trump openly said, no, I never said these words. So it was the, final, I believe it was the final act of Alaska. And by the way, the meeting in Alaska happened in August last year. So it is almost a year ago. And during last year, President Trump never mentioned Alaska, never mentioned Anchorage, never mentioned this meeting with Putin. He knew that he also lost politically and diplomatically. It was some achievement for Putin to meet President of United States, but there was a zero achievement for Trump from this meeting.
Yeah, when you said that it's not a peaceful retirement awaits of Sergei Lavrov, it reminds me one of the conversation I had with Antonio Guterres, General Secretary of the United Nations. We had a private conversation with him back in 2022 in New York. And I said back then, why Polanski and Nebenzia are not leaving the United Nations? Why they keep going and talking about combat mosquitoes and all these fake labs being in Ukraine and funding by the West? And he said, oh, Natalie, nobody's leaving the United Nations from Russia that way. They're gonna go through the window. That was just his quote.
Exactly.
As you said, accidentally somewhere in the car, on the plane, or whatever they may happen.
You know that during our war, during this last 4.5 years, in Russian Federation, about 30, let's say, highly ranked businessmen. They went to the windows physically. And I mean, when I say businessmen, this is businessmen from oil industry, mostly on oil and gas industry. They worked or in state-owned companies as vice president or president of state-owned oil company, or they worked in private companies also as like vice presidents, couple of vice presidents of company Lukoil, which is under Mr. Trump sanctions. This is formally private company, but de facto this is company which is ruled by Russian government, and they physically went to the window. By the way, one minister also killed himself with a gun. So this is Russian tradition now during the war.
Yeah, you know, I just, now I'm recalling how I was surprised that there are so many Russians presented in the United Nations and so little of Ukrainians. And they told me privately, you know how much money Russia is spending to the organization and institutions like that. Same happening right now with the Venice Biennale. When you see a Russian pavilion opening, like they were silenced for 4 years, and now they're just drinking champagne, talking to the Russian propaganda and everything. Michael, the negotiation process seems stuck, and Russia appears to be trying to push its own preferred, I would say, mediator into Europe, someone openly seen as a Russian lobbyist, a man long associated with the Kremlin's interest, feeds from Russian pockets. I'm talking about former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. Of course, he's not gonna be in charge in this process. This is ridiculous. But should Europe take a leading role in negotiations right now if they continue, or should the United States remain the main mediator still?
You know, nobody promised that negotiation process will continue a long time. Nobody promised that always we will live in the reality of any negotiation process. Before Mr. Trump became to be, second time, I mean, President of United States, there were no negotiation process between Russia and United States, no negotiation process between Russia and Europe, and no negotiation process between Russia and Ukraine. It was just a war. Now we have war and negotiation. And before that, we have only war. Anything changed? Our war became to be less bloody? No. So all of this negotiation process during a year and a half brought only the problems, brought only the, you know, brought only the more, it withdrew the attention from the war to negotiation process. But this negotiation process is absolutely empty, absolutely senseless. So it looks like without all of this masquerade of negotiation, it looks like that. So Europeans now, this process of Europe to start their own negotiation against Russia, it started from President Macron, but he started that about half a year ago, when he understood that Americans, they don't invite Europeans to the negotiation table. So Mr. Macron said, if now Americans, they conduct the negotiation with Russian Federation, so we will be stupid, we are European, if we not start our own negotiation. Because it is not blockade, not diplomatic blockade of Russian Federation, so let's start our own negotiation. But in Europe, as you know, all the processes were very long. This is not United States. The President Trump could make the decision during 10 minutes. In the European Union, which is very bureaucratic organization, and it took half a year to come to start the negotiation with Russian Federation. But the situation changed during last half a year. When Mr. Macron started that, it looked like, wow, we are coming to the peace agreement, to ceasefire agreement. Now it does not look like that. Now it looks like Mr. Rubio described that the process is absolutely stuck and there is no any perspective of this process. So now to Europe to start this negotiation is to lose it immediately. So I believe more in the phrases of chief diplomat of European Union, Kaja Kallas, who said about the special envoy, about the idea of special envoy, Mr. Schroeder, to use him as a special envoy to Moscow, etc., etc. She said that I am ready to be special envoy. I am ready to negotiate because I know how to negotiate with Russia, but I don't see any perspectives. So yes, we will, she said, they will appoint the special representative. Yeah, we will do that procedure. But we don't see any real steps from Russian side. And we will appoint the special envoy only for, for formulating our wishes from this negotiation. What we are asking from Russian Federation. And we are asking to withdraw military forces from Ukraine and to stop criminal behavior during the war, etc., etc., etc. So really, let's be realistic. We have a war, not negotiation. And only on the battlefield, now we decide that when the peace will come to Europe and on which condition the peace will come to Europe.
Thank you, Michael. This is a very good point, because I was thinking about the position of Europe these days in all this maybe renewing of the peace process anyway. And I was listening Andriy Sybiha recently being on the security conference in Poland, speaking to his colleague Radoslav Sikorski. Amazing speech, to be honest. And he said there that there is no other option than the United States being a mediator in this process, because otherwise we cannot survive. Europe, of course, we're welcome to see you, Brussels, but I mean, there is no other options. I don't know. I wanted to hear your perspective because you are not a politician, so you can openly say your opinion. Michael, at this stage, thank you so much for your time and see you next week.
Thank you, Natalia. See you next week.